and how children access places. Now, school catchment areas form part of those admission arrangements, and as a council we're required to consult on an annual basis on what the arrangements are for the academic year that follows almost 18 months in advance. So at the moment we're looking at the admission arrangements for September 2025. And we've just always felt really that if we're proposing anything significant by way of change to existing arrangements, that we should look at a more extensive consultation. And this particular consultation is proposing to review an area of the council and change its primary catchment area. So that's the background into where this report has come from. In terms of catchments themselves and their importance, as I've mentioned, they form part of the admission arrangements, and they help us as officers to administer the policy to determine which children are awarded places in the event that a school is oversubscribed. So just to elaborate a little on that, children within the catchment area for a school would receive priority of a school place over those who reside outside of the catchment area. Whilst parents will always have a preference of which school they would like their child to attend, and they can apply for any school, whether it's their catchment or not, I think it's useful to have a catchment area so families are aware of generally which school supports their community. It helps us to look at specific areas to make sure that we have suitable provision within a certain area. And a really important one is around home to school transport arrangements. So our policy is that we will provide free home to school transport to the nearest or the catchment school, if it's 2 miles at secondary or 1.5 miles at primary. Now, back in 2018, I believe, we kick-started a review of catchment areas, because I think it was fair to say that they hadn't been reviewed for a significant period of time. Many of the arrangements had been in place since or prior to reorganisation, so back in the Gwent days. And we had areas at secondary level where the catchment school for secondaries was one that was outside of the county. So we undertook a review. We followed this similar consultation process, and the areas that we largely focused on at that time was the areas of Usk and the surrounding areas and Goitre. The reason being is that those areas were part of the catchment area for Killian School in Newport, and we were having a rising demand from families within those areas to access a Monmouthshire school. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the catchment areas help form our decision making on who is to obtain places in the event of oversubscription, and we were having instances where some of our Monmouthshire families could not access a Monmouthshire secondary school. So following that extensive review, a decision was made to align our catchment areas so that every secondary age pupil formed part of the catchment area for a Monmouthshire secondary school. That didn't remove preference. We didn't say that parents couldn't apply for places in Killian, but we wanted to give families the opportunity to attend a Monmouthshire school if that was their wish. So that was the change that was made at that time. And we then were looking to move on to reviewing primary school catchment areas, which again is something that hadn't been reviewed for a significant period of time. We're a little bit further behind than we would have liked to have been with the primary school catchment review, because between the secondary review and now, we obviously had the COVID pandemic, and that has delayed some of the priorities that we had at the time. Now, just in terms of where we are now, we took a report to Cabinet in December that sought their permission really to engage in a rolling programme of primary school catchment areas, so that we could look at each area of the council, assess their suitability, and make any suitable changes subject to consultation processes. So that was agreed back in December. And the initial area that was agreed to launch consultation was the areas of Tredynnach, Lanhennock and Langdegford. And the reason why those areas were prioritised at this stage is that I mentioned the issue that we had around secondary schools. Well, those areas are the only areas within the council that are left at primary age that didn't have or currently don't have an allocated primary school catchment area. So the catchment school is currently Charles Williams Primary School in Newport. And we are seeing a rise in demand of families from within that area wishing to attend a Monmouthshire primary school. Usk Primary is the nearest primary school for that area, and it also transitions on to Monmouth Comprehensive School. So the affected area at secondary level is within the catchment for Monmouth Comprehensive School. But at the end of transition, obviously those families that are in Charles Williams have no transitional links at the moment with the school, or certainly not at the scale of that Usk do. So it felt sensible really to launch this consultation, to go out to the affected areas and ask for their opinions on whether they would be supportive of this change, to align themselves with a Monmouthshire primary catchment. So the consultation was launched in January, following the Christmas break. We wrote out to all of the schools within the affected area, all of the governing bodies, parents. We consulted with Newport City Council and with Charles Williams School directly, and the governing body as a school that was affected, just to raise the profile of this consultation and get the feedback. And most importantly, we directly targeted those families that are living within this area at the moment, to really ask them to engage and understand what their wishes were for their children going forward. So that consultation has recently closed, public consultation, and we're in the process now of analysing those results to form a report that will go to Cabinet on the 10th of April. To make a final decision on whether we amend the catchment area for that area. Now, that report to Cabinet will obviously include the absolute detail of the responses that we've had, but I just thought it would be useful for this committee just to understand the flavour of the feedback that we've had up to this point. So we, as I said, we engaged quite widely, I feel, directly targeting the families affected, and we've had 17 responses to the consultation, which sounds slightly low, but is also not hugely surprising, because when we do look at the number of families that are living within the affected area, it isn't a huge number that are being directly affected by the proposals. So of the 17 responses, there were 13 that were overwhelmingly in support of what we were looking to do here. Largely, the feedback that we have had is that Monmouthshire children should be able to have equal access to a Monmouthshire school that is equal to any other child that's living within the county. There's a view that the review was very welcome for the majority of families that are within the area, who are increasingly choosing to attend Usk School over Charles Williams, but do have significant struggles with obtaining access to the school. And then we also had a view that Usk Church in Wales School is looking at reduced numbers over the coming years when looking at the number of children residing within the area. So to welcome these additional children into the catchment area would be a positive outcome for the school. Obviously, I've mentioned that there were 13 supportive. There were four responses that were not supportive of the consultation. The two real themes around those responses were that the school within Newport is largely closer and allows the opportunity for families to walk or cycle to the school, and they didn't feel that opportunity would be available at the new proposed catchment school of Usk. And the second concern was around the travelling distances that their children would have to experience should they be required to attend Usk. Now, in the report that we will provide to Cabinet, there will be the detail of those responses and our council response to how we would address those concerns. And my initial response would be around the travelling distances and being able to walk to school, etc., is that we are not removing preference through this consultation. The families who wish to attend Charles Williams School can still express a preference to go to Charles Williams School, and they can still walk to that school if that is what they would like to do. This is more around providing the families with reassurance and security that if they would like to access a Monmouthshire school, they will be prioritised in the same way that all other Monmouthshire children are, and they will receive free home to school transport to that school. So our response would be along those lines to the families that we're certainly not expecting them to change school or change their views on which school they attend. They will still have that opportunity. Chair, I think I'm happy to pause there for a moment in terms of the background to the report, and I'm happy to take any feedback or any questions.
Thank you, Matt, and thank you for giving us a flavour of the consultation, because I think that was one of the issues that's going to come up in questions now. So can I ask Councillor Bromfield to kick us off with the first question?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Matthew, for bringing this report to scrutiny today. I am fully supportive of the consultation. I have submitted my response on the consultation also. It's really positive to hear of the responses that you've had and also your response to the concerns. So I'm really, really happy to endorse this report to go to Cabinet. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bromfield. Can I ask Councillor Powell to ask a question?
Thank you very much for this report. It's very clear and laid out so well that we haven't had that many questions. Just one thing that I'm often concerned about, when new blocks of houses are built, say sort of 120 houses, things like that, how many percentage of those people are school children? You know, we always think, well, if there's going to be a new place built and they'll be told, oh, there's a school down the road, but how many percentages of generally do you find? Because that's going to make a lot of difference to schools.
Yes, thank you for the question. And it is a really interesting one, and one that actually isn't particularly consistent even within our own authority. We seem to see different areas, and the impact of housing developments will be more significant in some areas than others. Now, this particular area of Usk, we work quite closely with the planning team in terms of any housing developments that do materialise, and we do look at a 5-year projection going forward for all of our schools before any planning application is approved, or if we are concerned around capacity, then there is the opportunity to seek funds to support additional children coming into school. In terms of this specific consultation, as I mentioned, the numbers are quite small from the affected area. So you are looking at approximately 2 or 3 children per year coming through into the reception intake over the next, 4 or 5 years. And Usk does have sufficient capacity to accommodate those children coming through, despite the proposed additional developments within the area. Those are taken account of within the projections. And what we'll often see is that we will have new families moving into the area, but we'll also have families moving out of the area as well. And in a large number of places, unless the development is of a significant size, the numbers tend to neutralise themselves, really. But we do factor them in as a worst case scenario, just to make sure that our schools have capacity. And in terms of Usk school itself, as I've mentioned, the intake number is suitable for 40 children per year group, but they do have a little bit of flexibility within that as well, in terms of their classroom spaces and their class structure. So we do have a little bit of a safety net there if the worst case were to happen.
I was thinking specifically of Abergavenny, where they had the new buildings out on the Mardy there, where there was a good many houses there, and whether the local primary schools were able to take them. But I said, we just don't know. As you say, very often there are people that have been living in the area, perhaps with parents, so they're not actually extra children. But yeah, it's something I think that people don't, when they build these places, they say, oh, here, a marvellous new building, a state school down the road. And then when they get there, they find there's no room in the school down the road. But,
yeah, and it is quite difficult to obviously project that going forward. So what we try and look to do is that we look at schools within an area, not just that designated school. So we look at a school that we consider to be within a reasonable distance, so that if they are in the unfortunate situation where their immediate school is at capacity, that they do have other options that are within a reasonable distance. And when we formed the Abergavenny arrangements, when we've looked at the build of the 3 to 19 school, and equally kind of leading on to the next report on the agenda, where we're looking at a Welsh medium provision, we are actually increasing capacity within the Abergavenny area in recognition of additional housing that is coming into the area.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Thanks, Mark. That was really helpful. Councillor Stevens.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And thank you, Matt, for this report. But I do have a few concerns, actually. You're saying about affected areas. Can you give me some facts and figures on the Crick Road development at Caldicot or Portskewitt, And the catchment area, if you can tell me which is the catchment area, I've tried to do a bit of research, and it seems that it's Castle Park School or Durand School. Both those primary schools are full to capacity at the moment. And just to enlighten you, a number of years ago, before the Crick Road development was passed at planning, we had officers come to address Caldicot Town Council and Portskewitt Council, and we were told that an average children per household would be 1.5 children. Now, if that is still in place, 1.5 children for 350 houses, where are those children going to go? There is a church school, the Archbishop Rowan Williams School, which probably, if you walk in, is the nearest school, but I'd like confirmation on that. And how will this be addressed? Because I believe some houses are not going to be very far away from having residents moving in. And in the report, under section 25, it says infant class sizes not to exceed 30 pupils to one teacher, which is great. And there are exceptions to this rule, but there seems to be an awful lot of exceptions to that rule. And I would really like some explanation in more detail about how many exceptions there are, how that actually works and that pans out for the pupils. Yes, that's basically it. Thank you.
Matt, do you want to come back on any of those points?
Yeah, thank you. I'm very conscious that the report that I've put together is focused on this this one particular area that impacts on Usk Primary School, and that's the preparation that has been arranged for this committee meeting today. What I would say is that obviously at the start of my presentation, I did mention the fact that we need to look at a rolling programme of catchment areas across the council. And some of the areas that have been mentioned today are areas that we are keen to focus on to make sure they are suitable and reliable going forward. Now, what I would say in terms of some of the developments that have been noted, particularly around Crick Road, etc., is that they are part of an area of review that we are going to need to be undertaking. Now, when the Crick Road development was approved, we have obtained funding from the developer to increase capacity within that area in recognition of the additional children that are likely to arise. You may be aware as well of the proposals as part of the revised local development plan of additional housing within that area that is going to create even more families. So we need to pause and take a detailed review of that area and how we're going to make sure we build the right capacity in the right areas. But as mentioned, we have already obtained some funding, and we will be able to obtain more funding. Our response to the revised development plan is to seek more funding to support those areas as those housing developments come on board. What I would say in the interim is our response has been to increase the capacity of Castle Park Primary School, funded through some Section 106 money that we've received for the area, and we've been able to increase their capacity in readiness for September 2024. So that will relieve some initial pressures, but that's not neglecting the need to undertake a more wider review to build capacity at potentially some of the other schools, and look at catchment areas alongside that. So as part of this ongoing review of catchment areas, I would expect the committee to be actively engaged in what that may look like, and there will be future reports coming forward. But obviously this particular report is just focused on that one area at the moment, but it is on our radar of other areas that we do need to be looking at.
Thank you, Matt. Just as an aside, when we were having a sort of discussion prior to the actual meeting, quite a few of us raised that we would really sort of welcome maybe a workshop or some training around, you know, obviously this has been really good for the sort of context and things, but I think we probably need some more in-depth training around sort of the not just about catchment areas, but the implications and what we need to be doing as a scrutiny committee to, you know, get on top of what some of the issues are. So I think we'll probably be coming back to you or your team for that if that's what the committee would like.
Yeah, that would be absolutely fine, Chair, and we will, as I said, we're in the process of developing a rolling programme that identifies areas that we feel need to be reviewed, and this committee are going to be incredibly important to that process in terms of looking at what areas are prioritised to go forward for future consultation. This is just the very starting point of what we're looking at doing.
I think for us, councillors along Severn side, we're really cognizant of, you know, the pressures that we're going to be sort of facing. Can I just ask Councillor Stevens, are you happy with Matt's response to your question?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, I was fully aware of the report being about the schools in the north of the county, but it was just the subject of catchment areas because I have had a number of emails from parents who have asked me those very same questions. So you just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time this morning. But thank you very much for your explanation, and I look forward to the workshop. Thank you.
No problem.
Can I ask Councillor Riley to make a point?
Thank you, Chair. And to be fair, Matt, I think mine might be more appropriate for the workshop too. I was just wondering really about funding for cross sort of county travel, because quite often someone will put a child into a school and move and leave their child at that school, and where that funding then applies to the school. I'm thinking in particular people who live in Usk but who choose to send their children to a school rated excellent just a few miles away in Torvine. But it obviously happens the other way. People establish themselves in a place, maybe for temporary reasons, get their child in a school, and I'm assuming that means that child can stay there for the entirety of its education in that specific age group. But where does the funding go? And that might be better, perhaps waiting for a workshop.
Yeah. Thank you for the question. I've got my colleague Nikki Wellington on the call as well. So if I get this wrong, I'm sure Nikki will jump in. But my understanding around funding is that it is purely based on the numbers on roll at the school. So it isn't relevant to whether you live in the county or out of the county. So when we submit our returns to Welsh Government, they ask for the numbers on roll at our schools, and we're funded on that basis. And it's one of the real important factors really as to why we wanted to make sure that Monmouthshire families can access a Monmouthshire school. Because obviously if we do lose them outside of the county borders, then they might be Monmouthshire residents, but because they're not on roll of a Monmouthshire school, we wouldn't receive the funding for them.
Thank you, Matt. Councillor Riley, are you happy with that?
Yes, I am, thank you. When I say I'm happy with it, it doesn't seem very fair or satisfactory, but yeah, I'm happy with the answer being factual. Thank you.
And Nikki Wellington, has Matt got his information correct to us?
Yeah, absolutely correct. Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure, Councillor Riley, if you're referring to the transport costs or whether it was the pupil funding.
No, it was the pupil funding.
Yeah,
I'm aware of a family from Usk who take their child to Torvine, happy to do the travelling, but it doesn't seem very fair, and vice versa coming in with the actual funding for the school placement. But you know.
Yeah, so where people's coming from out of county, obviously we will get the funding then for them. So if they're coming in from Torvine, coming into Monmouthshire receives the funding for that pupil, and vice versa.
And does that, you used the term neutralise themselves earlier, Matt, does it neutralise itself?
Not always. I guess it depends on where you are within the county. I mean, if you take Chepstow, for instance, you know, we have a significant secondary school just across the border, and we know a number of pupils go across the border to a Gloucestershire school. I would say in that case, probably more go across than come into Monmouthshire, but in other parts of Monmouthshire, the pattern is different.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you.
Thanks for that explanation. Can I bring in Councillor Howarth, please?
Thank you, Chair. I'm sorry for that slow reaction. Just a couple of screens running here. Yeah, good morning, Matt, and good morning, Nikki. One of my questions then is reference to this proposal. You said that we had quite a number of children which are in Monmouthshire, part of the consultation, have objected to the proposals there. What is the number? Did you say 4 or 5? I didn't quite catch that, Matt.
Yeah, so there's 17 responses in total to this consultation.
Yep.
And 4 of those have been, I think probably objection is a little bit strong, but they've raised concerns about the change that I feel that we need to address and reassure through this process.
Okay, so where we have said 4, is that our numbers game then? Is that eight individual pupils or whatever, or you know, on the numbers game? Because it is a numbers game, isn't it? So if the 4 families have objected, it may be only 2 families, but mum and dad or grandparents or whatever may have written a letter. But you know, I mean, what is the numbers game on that? And let's say that they decide then that they're going to not go to Newport and they're going to come to Usk. The cost of transporting them children then up to Usk, which we'll have to pay for because it will be probably more than 2 miles. Is that right? Where do we go with that then? Because I know it's difficult with budgets, etc., and in costing for children to transport them, especially in the rural areas. And then my other question is: you said Usk had capacity of 40 or more. Is that in Key Stage 1 in admission side of it? Have they got 2 classrooms there in Usk? So if they have that, I mean, they got plenty of capacity there. Is that right? I didn't catch that one either. I wasn't too sure when you said, oh, they got plenty of capacity there. They can take up to 40 pupils, which for me, if the minimum, max is 30, does that mean actually they're running two Key Stage admissions there? And my last question is, next to last question is to Nikki. What's the formula we have now for new builds? Is it, what percentage are we using at the moment? Going back to the councillor's point there, over in Crick there, what is the formula that we use on the basis of admission? Is it 1.3 per household, or is it different to that? And my last question is going back to the Usk one now then. Major problems lie in many of our areas and our wards reference to the issue of siblings. If a sibling is admitted to a school early on, that gives the parents the right then for other siblings out of area to come to that school, which has caused major problems where I reside as well. And I'm sure that is around the county. Going to this report then, have we looked at that on the bigger picture here with this report there on the sibling side of it? And that boils down to my first question about the ones who've objected there. Are they the lot? Is there more than 4? We may be talking 8 children there who've decided that they're objecting. 2 families, maybe they may have more than that. I just wanted the numbers game really on that one, Matt, please.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, unfortunately, the responses that come into us allows the responder to remain anonymous, unfortunately. So it doesn't allow us to dig into the detail of how many children that they actually have. So what we rely on through this consultation is that worst case scenario. So if all of these children that we're aware of residing in the area wanted to go to USC as a result of this change, so the children, we wouldn't anticipate that children would necessarily change schools when they're already settled in their schools, but those young ones who are coming through into reception over the next 3, 4, 5 years, have we got capacity for those children to come in? And that's where our focus has been. Now, you are absolutely right in that there are costs associated with this proposal, and they are identified within the report. It is something that the Cabinet will have to carefully consider in the current financial climate. What I would say, and from the initial meeting that we had with Cabinet back in December, is that there's possibly a level of inequity at the moment in the area. So if you're a secondary age child living in those areas of Monmouthshire, you have free transport to a Monmouthshire secondary school. If you're a primary age child, potentially in the same family, the primary age child would not have transport to a Monmouthshire school. So there's the balance of cost against providing equity. And I know it's something that Cabinet will want to consider carefully in April. The purpose of this at this stage was just to establish what the appetite was from the area to want to come into the school. Now, I know you mentioned around potential problems in future around siblings, etc. We have amended our admissions policy that children who reside within the catchment area for a school receive priority over those who reside outside of the catchment but might have a sibling link. So the focus has shifted to prioritising children within the catchment area, and we've been quite careful with our correspondence to families that if they are choosing a school that is outside of their catchment area, that there's no guarantees that we can accommodate any younger children who come through. So that is something that we have introduced, and there was a period of honouring existing siblings, but we're coming to the end of that period now. So we are almost at the stage of fully prioritising in-catchment children.
Okay. And Chair, can I just ask then, going back to that one, that question we answered about transport for junior children, I got 1.5 miles here. So the report is saying that if the families opt to go to a school, the ones which we may have the objections to, I don't know the area, the 3 areas that you mentioned there. I know where the reservoir is, etc., but them areas I'm not too sure about. But Usk is quite a rural area on the outer reaches of it. So most of these children, which we're asking, which go to Newport, and we're asking them, the catchment area is changing now. Your catchment will be a school. How many pupils are we talking in altogether at the moment then? If we're talking a 5-year program here, so I'm just want to be clear now on the numbers game more than anything. Are we talking an extra 4 probably minibuses, perhaps transporting these children around, trying to bring them up from different areas, or will it be one minibus, etc.? I'm just looking at the bigger picture here of the cost of all bringing them in, and whether they go to Newport with their heads and their minds. I don't take. I think children are settled in schools, but I think once you find out that actually you've got to go to your school and the transport implications, especially now, and getting to some of these schools in Newport's probably a lot harder than getting over to us there. That would be my last question, and just a question to Nikki on the numbers game, on the basis of what ratio do we use at the moment for junior and senior pupils? Thanks.
Yeah, okay. So just in terms of the numbers that we're talking about coming through, so when we looked at the detail behind this report and the consultation and trying to assess demand, we could see that there were 28 children living within the affected area at the moment. 13 of those children were attending Charles Williams School, and 9 were already attending Usk School. There were a couple of others then that were choosing either private education or schools completely out of that area. So in terms of the transport implications, potentially there are 9 children who, as a result of this catchment change, would then be eligible for transport to Usk schools. So they're not eligible at the moment, but they would potentially become eligible if this change came through. Now, looking forward then, in terms of the projected position, we can see that there are round about between now and September 2027 is what we've looked at. There are around about 2 children per year then that reside within that catchment area that we have built into Usk's numbers, just to make the assumption that if this change were to go through, they would choose a catchment school. We don't know whether they will. We know that some choose private school already. We know that some will continue to include Etta County. But if I were to estimate the numbers, it would be a minibus of children that would be unlikely to increase significantly beyond that, because with the 1 or 2 children coming through per year, we can also anticipate that some of those 9 already in the school will be transitioning on to secondary school. There are also transport arrangements that are already in place in that area because of our secondary commitment. So we are running feeder buses at the moment from that area to pick up the main buses in Usk. Quite interestingly, there are a large proportion of those children in the area at the moment who would actually be entitled to transport to Charles Williams School, because they are over the 1.5 miles, but they're currently not claiming it. So our transport commitment in that area is very small at the moment, and it looks as if it will increase because of this proposal. But the likelihood is, if everyone, even with existing arrangements, if everyone were to take up their entitlement for transport, there would be this level of cost there anyway. So it looks like we're building a cost, but we actually could potentially have that cost anyway if people started applying for transport to Charles Williams.
Thank you, Chair.
In terms of the numbers for the housing developments, it's something that I'm happy to bring forward the detail of. It's quite complicated because we will look at the formula will look at numbers based on different size houses. So it isn't just one number. So we'll look at a development and it'll be affected by the number of 2-bed, 3-bed, 4-bed houses. But if this is something that is of interest to the committee as we move forward with this ongoing review, then we'll make sure that that level of detail is there for councillors to understand.
I think that would be really helpful, Matt. I think that's something that, you know, we're all quite interested in trying to get to the context and how we make projections and actually to work out how many school places will be needed in the future. Are you happy to move on, Simon?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Okay. Councillor Jones?
Hi, thank you. And thank you, Matt, for a really clear and straightforward report. Just a few comments, really, but pre-21st century schools, the catchment area was considered just as that was about to take off, in fact. So everybody was looking at the catchment area. But in those days, of course, local authorities were quite protective of their numbers. Culzean schools certainly did not want to relinquish Monmouthshire pupils, and it was hard going. I mean, it was, you know, quite full of angst, some of the meetings, and likewise, people who lived in Llanhennig overlooking Llandovery did not want to come into Monmouthshire. But of course, as the schools were built, and we had a brand new school in Monmouth, for instance, then parents were more interested in sending their children to a brand new comprehensive. So since that time, of course, Monmouthshire wanted to retain their pupils in county where possible, quite rightly. And I think Newport now have taken on the same desire. So my question is, I presume that the Newport local authority will give preference for the Charles Williams School, for instance, to those pupils who live in the area, in county, over those who live outside.
Yeah,
so at least this, yeah, okay.
Yeah. Slightly complicated in that Charles Williams School is actually a voluntary aided school.
Yes. Yeah.
So the governing body are responsible for its admission arrangements, which includes the catchment area. So the positive for the families that reside within the area is that we are not actually amending Charles Williams's catchment. So what we are doing is we're amending the catchment area for Usk School. So what in effect will happen is that there will be an overlap where those families will reside in Charles Williams catchment in line with their admission arrangements, and in Usk's catchment in line with Monmouthshire's admission arrangements. So as things stand, the parents will have in effect a dual entitlement. Obviously, there is the potential, as with what Newport did when we amended the catchment area before, that Charles Williams could come forward in future years and then shrink their catchment so that Monmouthshire families reside outside of the catchment area. They haven't suggested that that's what they're looking to do as part of this consultation, but obviously it will be a consultation process that they would have to follow in future years, that the families would be able to respond to.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. In fact, it's a win-win situation for those people. Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Hazel, what happens now? Do I have to sum up? Oh, I'm just going to pass over to Hazel, and I think she's going to sort of sum up for me. It's very helpful.
We've asked a lot of questions really around sufficiency, but also in terms of future housing developments, and the committee seems to be very interested in projections. I think there's broad support for this proposal in terms of the report that Matt's brought today with these 3 areas in Usk, but I think the committee are very interested in looking at other areas relating to future sort of elements of the school catchment review. So I think, Matthew, they seem to be very interested in having workshops with you, which I know we've had in the past. We had one back last summer, I believe, in the running up to drafting this report. But they're very interested in being engaged in that, and also it's important that board members work with you behind the scenes in relation to the particular areas that you might be focusing on. So as an action going forward, we'll set up some workshops as and when the time points are correct, if that's okay.
Thank you, Hazel. Can we move on to the second report? And obviously it's Matt again, so thank you for the report. And it's sort of the statutory consultation on proposals to increase the capacity of if any. Can I pass over to you, Matt, for your report?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So again, I'm conscious that the committee would have had this report in advance. So I'm not looking to go through in any level of detail. Just by way of background, members I'm sure will be aware that when the Abergavenny review was undertaken and we were required to submit our what was termed the Band B proposals of the 21st Century Schools programme at that time, where we agreed to build a 3 to 19 school. It was also broadly agreed around the proposal would leave the Derry View site, primary school site, vacant, and that would allow us to work towards complying with our responsibilities as a local authority to be increasing Welsh medium provision across the county. So members will be aware that in September 2024, we're opening a seedling school in Monmouth as part of the plan to increase the number of children being able to access Welsh medium provision. And we're, in terms of this particular report, we are proposing that the Ysgol Gymraeg Efenni school is relocated from its existing site to the very excellent accommodation that is still available at what was Derry View Primary School, and that will enable us to provide 420 Welsh medium school places in that area, so a two-form entry, and allow the opportunity for growth, but also growth through delivery through excellent facilities. So when Ysgol Gymraeg Efenni was first opened on that site, it was a 210 place school. And the numbers on roll have continued to grow. And we're currently supporting that increase through some temporary accommodation that is around the site, which is the authority are renting at the moment for the school to allow the school's capacity to increase. And the school are doing an excellent job with the accommodation that they have available. But I think we're in the position of really seeing an opportunity here to provide those Welsh medium learners with excellent facilities that are available at that site and increase the numbers. So funds were already allocated as part of that BAM-B programme to allow the move to happen. But there is a statutory process that we must follow to increase the capacity of a school by this level. So that is the process that we're currently following. We've gone out to consultation in a similar way to how I explained the primary catchment. So we've reached out to all families within the area, not just those at Ysgol Gymraeg Efenni, but all of the primary schools, the families, the governing bodies, to seek their views on whether this proposal should go forward. The closing date for responses is now next week, the 11th. So after that, we will be preparing a report to Cabinet. It is a slightly lengthier process than how I explained the primary catchment review, because we're following the school organisation code with this report. So the decision that Cabinet will be making in April will be whether to proceed with next stages of the process, as opposed to whether to implement proposals. What that means is that there will be further opportunities for us to keep the committee up to date. So at the moment, we're really interested in the committee's views on the proposal as I've explained, and any feedback to Cabinet as to whether they should proceed to next steps of this statutory process at their meeting in April. Thank you, Chair. I think I'm happy to stop there.
Thank you, Matt, and thanks for a really detailed report, so thank you. I can see that Councillor Riley would like to sort of speak.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Matt. And I'm sorry to allude back to what I was saying here. I just wonder how Monmouthshire is going to compete with schools like Ysgol Panteg, who have just been rated excellent, and how that is going to affect, as I talked about earlier, the funding, if it goes out of county. I just wonder how we are going to compete with that.
Yeah, thank you. It's I mean, looking at the trends at the moment, we don't really lose many children in Monmouthshire to Ysgol Panteg. So the children in that north of the county then do generally tend to go to Ysgol Gymraeg Efenni at primary level, and with the existing arrangements, the children from Monmouth also transition down from Monmouth down to Ysgol Gymraeg Efenni, and that's why we're looking at putting some local provision in place just to increase the numbers. I think in terms of increasing the demand in the area to keep children who are interested in Welsh medium education within the area, I think obviously this proposal is a very positive step. They will be moving to an excellent accommodation. We met with staff of Ysgol Gymraeg Efenni last week and the governing body on the site, on the proposed site, and staff were overwhelmed at the facilities that are available at the proposed new site compared to what they have at the moment. And I think we chatted through with them really that if we were to build a brand new 420 primary school for them now, they probably wouldn't be getting what is on offer at the proposed site. So the facilities there are really excellent and are going to be a real selling point for the school for those who are interested in Welsh medium education, and certainly a lot stronger selling point of what they have at the moment, where they're viewing through temporary accommodation on the site. So I'm hopeful that there will be a positive outcome in those wishing to be educated through the medium of Welsh.
I'm very much encouraged by what you just said. I do worry about you mentioned Monmouth, but it is literally 5-6 miles from Usk, and I do worry if we will lose some very good academically gifted children who want to actually move through the medium of Welsh. But I am encouraged by what you just said. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Riley. Councillor Howarth?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just a couple of quick questions. I was just unclear there on the Derryview site there, which is a lovely site, and it has been really a problem for us for many, many years, but hopefully we'll overcome that now by moving Medium Welsh up there. What is the numbers on that school? It's more than a 210 school, isn't it?
Yes, it is. So it's they have 14 classrooms, which makes them a two-form entry, so they can have 60 children per year.
Yeah.
And that's overall capacity of 420.
That's right.
They also have quite a large nursery space that would allow them to have a 60-place nursery. And they also have other facilities in terms of a special needs resource base. So I know that the school in time are quite keen to develop that, because I think as a region, the availability of special needs resource bases through the medium of Welsh are limited.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that they are keen that as they continue to grow, that they have the accommodation there to potentially look at that in future. So it's a lovely site. It's a very large 420 place school.
Okay, thanks for that. Yeah, it's a wonderful school they've got out there. Now, my last question then is how are we going to be affected now with the backlog of the announcement last week that we have a delay in the delivery of our new school, which means Derryview has a problem then, hasn't it, as reference to transferring everything over and shifting medium. How is that going to affect everything here on the long-term view of what's happening out there?
Yeah, thank you. If it's okay, I'll bring Nikki in on that one, because she's been dealing with colleagues around that delay. So Nikki might be better placed just to update you on where we are with that.
Thanks, Mark. Thank you.
Sorry, Nick. That will have an effect on what you're doing here, though, with this report as well. Also, Warren, because we've got no time scales. If we had time scales, it'd be great, but we don't really. So it may actually. You said the closing date for your document is this week, I think. Was it this week or next week? Which actually you may want to extend that if you wanted, and not take to cabinet till May. Is that? Am I wrong in saying that, or until we get the date?
Yeah, the consultation stage is to conclude on the 11th, so next Monday, and the proposals are then to bring feedback to Cabinet at the meeting in April. Obviously, Cabinet can make the decision at that meeting to either extend the consultation period. They can make small changes to what was initially proposed within the consultation. So if there is a delay in the implementation date, then we can shift that implementation date. But those are all factors that Cabinet will need to consider in April. But sorry, Nick.
Thank you, Matt. Thanks, Councillor Harris, for the question. Yes, so just to be clear, obviously there is a delay at the new King Henry 3 to 19 school in Abergavenny. All parents, just to confirm, all parents have been notified of that delay, so we are publicly telling parents so they are aware. There is no date set as yet, but what we are looking, it is likely to be the move from, if any, from the current site over to the new site will be September 25. That will give us time to refurbish the school, because obviously you can't do that while the current pupils are in the lower school. So September 25, but obviously we will keep everyone up to date if there are any further changes on that.
Can I just ask, do you think that is feasible? You know, given the news about King Henry?
From all the reports that we've had so far, yes, it is feasible. Yes, with the work that needs to be done, yes, it is feasible.
Can I just add, Matt, your comment on special needs and ALN children through the medium of Welsh, I hadn't actually thought of that. So that's quite a really, that's quite important, isn't it? That if, children currently receiving education through sort of Welsh medium, that then are diagnosed with certain sort of conditions, continue through their school journey through Welsh. That's really, really important. So the fact that, that will be sort of incorporated in this new sort of school, I think it's to be welcomed, really.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just to be clear, that the report that is out for consultation at the moment doesn't establish a special needs resource base on the site of the school. So children accessing the school will be mainstream additional learning needs. However, the school has the facility as they grow that we can establish that as we go forward. If we work with our neighbouring colleagues around demand, etc., there's huge potential going forward that if that's a supported decision, that it has the accommodation there to do so if that's the direction we wanted to go in.
I understand. That's really useful sort of point of clarification, so thanks for that. Is there any other member of the committee that wishes to sort of to have any input or a question or any issues raised? I can't see any hands up and I can't see any hands in the chat. So can I thank both Nikki and... Oh, I think I can hear Councillor Howarth in the background. Can I just thank Matt and also Nikki for the points raised and sort of the detail that you've given to us this morning. And I'm just going to hand over to Hazel a minute.
Yes, I think similarly to the last item, Chair, some of the discussion has crossed over, particularly in terms of the formula and future housing development, but also you mentioned Welsh medium provision there and where you might lose children to. I think Matt's answered all your questions, but I think there seems to be broad support for this proposal. I don't see anybody having said they don't support it. So I think we can just pass on some comments to the Cabinet member after the meeting and say that there's broad support from this committee.
Oh, sorry. Can I just thank Matt and Nikki for their help this morning? Really, really helpful. And I think we move on to the next bit of the agenda. So thanks both.
Yep, happy to take members through the work programme. You'll see that that the date of the next meeting is the 16th of April. We've got two sort of housing related items on there, but they're both to be confirmed. So I'll be confirming that with officers after the meeting. And then we've got an 11th of June, the planning and provision of the school places to come back to you after the consultation, which follows on from today. So we've got other items on the work programme, but I'm aware that from the pre-meeting, members had some suggestions also. So can we take those, please, Chair?
I think Councillor Riley has got a hand up.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to bring forward possibly inviting the Cabinet Member for Engagement and Equalities, because a number of things have been raised with me about the Blue Badge scheme. And I think we absolutely should be keeping people in their homes and as independent as possible. But the Blue Badge scheme is not about people saving money. It's about maximising their personal resources and enabling them to help them keep them independent when life is very difficult for them. So many people have spoken to me about the huge differences between applying for a blue badge within Monmouthshire to other areas. And I mean right throughout Wales. Macmillan tell me they don't even bother to apply anymore in Monmouthshire. And I would like to actually discuss why we have these huge differences. The St David's Hospice team, they cover 3 local authority areas. They say Monmouthshire is just impossible to get acceptance. Age Cymru, citizens' advice. I would like us to invite these people along and to discuss why, if we are correct in our interpretation of the guidelines, I would like to know that, and if it is hugely different to other local authority areas, I would like to discuss that too. Would that be acceptable to everybody?
I think members in the chamber are all nodding. I think we need some, and I can see Councillor Jones putting a thumbs up as well. I think it's really important that there's some consistency over not just Monmouthshire but across Wales as well. So yeah, I would be quite keen on getting some input on that. Can I just Hazel, would that be Councillor Sandals or would it be Councillor Chandler? I'm just thinking whether it's social care and health. Probably both. But we need to sort of, find out what's going on. Councillor Howarth has got his hand up.
Well, have I? Sorry. Yeah, I think following on from our discussions on the 2 documents, I think it would be important probably to, I don't know whether we should recommend that actually we run a seminar, all members seminar on this catchment areas discussion we've had today, because I think every member has an issue or as a point to discuss, and I think it would, especially on the planning side of it, with our LDP etc. coming forward, I think it'd be really important to get some numbers and information more than anything before we start entering into having workshops. I think getting the information first will be really helpful on what we're doing. I.e., I didn't know, but I thought they had a formula they used, and Nikki or the officer wouldn't give it us, but I thought it was a formula used for the development, but they were very clear in saying that actually it's done case by case. I don't think that is quite correct, but I mean, who am I? I think the issue of Sue, you've mentioned there, I thought Welsh Government set the criteria for disabled, but I may be wrong. And if they do, and we're not abiding by it, that is poor on our behalf. Yeah, that'd be great to get the document on what we have there as policy, and how common it is with the other local authorities around us on direction of where we are with that. And then going back to the document of what we received yesterday on the schools budget, etc. I think for us it was something we need to actually probably take forward over the next 12 months for next year's budget, really, more than anything. As you know, that comes quite quickly. So a couple of things there I just want to point on, really, but not just my thoughts, it's what other members' thoughts are as well, because we'll have to work together on what we do with the work programme. But yeah, so there's enough to go out there. Hazel, when is our next budget monitoring to take place? Have we done Q3 yet? I can't remember seeing it, but I may be wrong.
It goes to budget monitoring, just goes to performance and overview scrutiny committee now. They hold the scrutiny of all the ongoing budget monitoring. So they've had the outturn, they've had the month 3, and I think they're due. I can check in a minute, Chair, when they do the next report.
Do we get them, Chair? Do we receive them as well? Then once they've done that, is there any highlights for us to look at with reference to that? So anything which has got a major overspend, which comes under our remit, or do they take that on?
No, they take that responsibility of doing all the scrutiny on the budget monitoring, but they do sum up at the end of their meetings, and their minutes are available straight away with feedback given to Cabinet. in writing. So when the reports go through to Cabinet, they have the summary that the committee's come up with and all of the points. I can provide it to you if you'd like to see the ones for the last meeting.
Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, I forgot to press the button. Councillor Powell.
Yeah, going back to the problem about blue badges. I've had a blue badge for quite a few years because I've got a damaged spine. The form has got far more complicated than it used to be, and they do it very much on a point system. If you get enough points, and there's so many different questions now that there didn't used to be, and people do have difficulty. I have people ringing me up, and usually if I can help them through it, I do. But it used to involve your doctor, but you're not supposed to go to the doctors anymore. They do. You're supposed to just do it through the form to the office. And I think if people do have a problem, the best thing is to ring here and speak to somebody in that office, and they will explain to you where the problem is. But a lot of people don't realise that one of the strange, well, it isn't strange, I suppose. One of the things is if somebody isn't on any type of pain tablets or anything like that, that's it. You won't get it. It sounds a strange thing, but that's one of the main questions: is are you on pain relief, and what is the pain relief? And a lot of people, you know, they say, well, I'm in pain, but I don't take anything, and it's so strange that. You know, that it's, but I can understand it. They've got to have a criteria and they've got to have a measure for whether people should have it or not have it. But it has got far more complicated, and I think people do need help. And as I said, I recommend if them actually speaking to the lady, I can't think of her name now, and I mean, they will explain it to you. Or if you're going to the one-stop shop, they're very helpful. But it has got far more complicated, the form.
Councillor Jones, please.
In that case, thank you, Chair. In that case, my question is, why is Monmouthshire different to everyone else? You know, it's absolute. That's ridiculous. So the sooner we get this sorted out, the better. I think it's a really positive topic. Please
I think it's about consistency, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I didn't realise there was any difference anywhere else because I've never gone anywhere else. But until Penny said, I didn't realise that it was different in other places.
Councillor Howarth, Hazel wants to just clarify something with you a minute.
Yeah, sorry, Chair, I got the wrong month in terms of the budget monitoring. I couldn't remember off the top of my head because Robert leads this committee. But basically, performance and overview have scrutinised the month 9 position. And they made, they produced a feedback which was sent to Cabinet. So they scrutinised that on the 20th of February, fairly recent. So if members would like me to email through their minutes and their summary, I can do that, Chair.
Councillor Riley, did you want to come back?
I don't know that, well, basically I did want to come back, but I'm not sure whether it's productive. But I understand what Councillor Powell is saying, but if we are in, it's no good ringing a woman who is possibly interpreting differently, maybe interpreting correctly, and maybe that is something that needs discussion. But Councillor Powell is absolutely right about the pain relief being a criteria. But some painkillers are actually debilitating may help you with pain, but doesn't help you become independent. And that is an absolute criteria for a blue badge. What painkillers are you taking? And that is really why I don't want us to rely on ringing somebody up who is interpreting things a particular way if other local authority areas are. And that's why I would ask that we invite the people who are working across county to see what the differences are. Thank you.
Hazel, are we able to do that?
Yeah.
Chairman, could we not ask Torvine, could we not ask Blaenau Gwent, could we not ask our neighbours to send us their policy of how they assess a blue badge? We've got them then, and then we can go from there. And if their policies are totally like, you know, as you're quite right, Sue, you know, I mean, that's appalling, really. I didn't even know that actually if you're on medication for pain,
I'm wondering whether. Yeah, I'm wondering whether it would be useful to have some professionals, i.e. some of the ones that Councillor Riley has just mentioned, like St David's or Macmillan or other people that are, or maybe
Age Cymru.
Age Cymru, who have the experience, because I mean, even if the criteria is written down, it's actually how that is interpreted and actually decisions are made rather than, you know, what the policy says really. But can I leave it to you, Hazel, to contact the various people? So that's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else that's got anything else to raise? So can I move to confirm the minutes of the previous meeting on the 23rd of January? Anybody?
Move, Chair.
Yeah. So Councillor Bromfield has moved, and we got seconder. Is it Councillor Howarth? Yeah. Okay. And so our next meeting is on the 16th of April. So can I just thank everybody for their input this morning? It's been really useful, really clear reports, and thank everybody, and see you all soon. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jackie, and well done.
Thank you.